They mocked black woman for being barren at 40, but the wanted Mafia Alpha King fell for her. They called her Barren. Leonard Gold called her his greatest strength. At 40, Heaven George was ready to accept her fate as society's discard, until the Mafia Alpha King, a man who valued ruthlessness above lineage, stepped out of the shadows and declared his ownership. Now, the world that mocked her is about to learn that touching the Alpha's queen means signing your own death warrant. Subscribe for daily werewolf romance stories with strong heroines, fated mates, and epic plot twists. Comment where you are watching from and grab your bonus in the pinned comment. The humid air of the private botanical conservatory clung to Heaven George like a second skin, a comforting, verdant embrace amidst the chill of societal disdain. Here, beneath the arching glass roof, the pressures of the outside world, the expectation of lineage, the whispers of failure, could almost be silenced. But the real world, as always, had a jarring way of intruding. Another year, another family gathering, and still no heir for the scholar lineage from you, Heaven? The voice, thin and sharp as a sliver of broken glass, belonged to Clarice Sterling, Fredrick's ambitious younger cousin. Clarice had cornered Heaven earlier at a benefit luncheon, her smile a predatory snarl. 40 years is a long time, darling. One would think you might find some dignity and accept your limitations. Some women are just meant to be ornamental, I suppose. Heaven had smiled then, a practiced, cool expression designed to deflect. But the words, though delivered in a hush that wouldn't carry beyond their table, had found their mark. At 40, the whispers of barren and childless followed her like shadows, clinging to her elegant form even amidst the vibrant life of her beloved plants. She knew the pitying glances, the thinly veiled condescension from those who saw her as incomplete, as a lovely husk that could not fulfill its ultimate purpose. She straightened her spine now, smoothing the scarlet silk of her gown, a shade she wore precisely because it was bold, defiant. Heaven had refused to vanish. If she could not bear children, she would nurture life in its most beautiful, fragile forms. Her true world lay here, among the life that didn't judge, where resilience was measured in root strength, not fertility. She was bent over a rare Paphiopedilum, a slipper orchid with a velvety, wine-dark bloom, when the atmosphere abruptly shattered. A sudden, hushed commotion ripped through the glasshouse. It wasn't the sound of guests, but the calculated rhythm of men moving with purpose. Leonard Gold's enforcers swept through the main promenade, their movements cold, precise, and utterly terrifying, a striking contrast to the delicate foliage. "The Alpha King is here," a gardener whispered, retreating behind a wall of ferns, eyes wide with fear and respect. Heaven's heart gave a single hard thump against her ribs. Leonard Gold, the most feared man in the city, the man whose name was rarely spoken aloud without a shudder, the ruthless orchestrator of the city's dark commerce. He was the wanted Alpha King, and his presence here, in her quiet sanctuary, promised either ruin or a bizarre, dangerous reprieve. She stayed low, focused on the orchid, hoping the towering palms would conceal her, hoping she would not be mistaken for one of his subordinates. But Leonard Gold did not follow the usual paths. He ignored the main aisles, heading directly toward the most secluded, humid section of the house, the orchid conservatory. Amidst the tension, a brief moment of distraction proved fatal. As Heaven backed up to adjust a mister, she collided with a solid, immovable form, the sound of their contact swallowed by the rushing humidity. "My apologies," she began, flustered, then froze as she found herself looking up into the piercing, granite-gray eyes of Leonard Gold. He was tall, imposing even in a simple tweed coat, his dark hair falling slightly forward over a face that was severe and beautiful in its utter ruthlessness. His men who had followed him instantly froze, creating an eerie pocket of silence around them. "The fault is entirely mine, madam," he replied, his voice deep, a low rumble that vibrated through the air, yet held a sharp edge of command. For a moment, brief but agonizing, his gaze lingered on her face with an unsettling intensity that went far beyond mere appraisal. He didn't look at her age or her station, but into her, into the weariness and the fierce intelligence she usually kept masked. It was a mutual recognition, a jolt of connection she hadn't anticipated. "Heaven George," she supplied, offering a small, dignified inclination of her head. "Heaven," he repeated, the name tasting dangerous and strange on his tongue. Then, ignoring his lieutenant, who was murmuring urgently about an impending situation, Leonard looked past her to the rare Paphiopedilum. "A fine specimen," he observed, his tone shifting from alpha to aesthete. "It requires specific fungal partners to thrive, a delicate symbiotic existence, beautiful but demanding." "All things of true worth are demanding, Your Grace," Heaven replied, surprised by her own frankness. He gave the faintest hint of a smile, a rare momentary softening of his hard jawline. Then he performed the shocking, unexpected gesture. He reached out, his gloved hand settling gently, deliberately, beneath her chin, cupping her jaw. "Tell me, Miss George," he murmured, leaning closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "What is the secret to getting a bloom like this to thrive when every other element of its environment seems determined to let it die? Show me! Don't just tell me." It was a direct, impossible challenge, an intimate public invitation. His courtship was to demand the secret of her survival. The whispers erupted immediately, not just from the few gardeners watching, but from the ranks of his own terrified men. The Alpha King, who cared only for power and profit, had just asked the barren 40-year-old botanist to share her deepest knowledge. Leonard eventually withdrew his hand, the brief touch leaving her skin tingling. With a curt nod to his men, he turned to leave. His parting words, however, were for her alone, whispered with a gravity that belied the flowery setting. "Thank you, Heaven. This greenhouse holds more truth than the whole city outside." Heaven stood amidst the hot, damp air, watching him go, her entire world thrown into disarray by a shared look and a conversation about an orchid. The gossip was already a living, malignant thing, but she couldn't deny the thrilling, terrifying sensation that for the first time in years, she felt utterly visible. The next morning, the gray light of the city did little to dim the absurdity of the previous day. Heaven had almost convinced herself the encounter was a dream until a heavy-duty, unmarked black SUV pulled up to the conservatory gates. The butler, trembling, delivered a package far too large for a typical delivery. It was a secure, climate-controlled box. Not roses, but a magnificent, fragile specimen she had only ever seen in faded scientific sketches. A ghost orchid, a rare, almost mythical epiphyte that required impossible conditions to survive. With the delivery was a small card, stiff and white, containing only 4 words in a bold, masculine hand. From Leonard Gold. For the only bloom that matters. It wasn't a courtesy, it was a definitive public declaration of unconventional war on the status quo. The ghost orchid, now nestled in Heaven's conservatory, was both a wonder of nature and a ticking social bomb. Its very presence was a testament to Leonard Gold's unique form of communication, yet it terrified Heaven's relatives. They understood the gesture wasn't romantic, it was proprietary. Heaven's older brother, Robert, cornered her that evening in her study, his face pale with dread. "Heaven, you must send it back today. Leonard Gold doesn't send gifts. He marks territory. He sent a rare specimen that speaks to my scientific soul, Robert. It's an acknowledgement of who I am, not what I lack," Heaven countered, but her defiance felt fragile. "And who you are is a target," Robert hissed, leaning in close. "He is the Alpha King. He is a wolf, Heaven, not some romantic lead from a book. He will use you, and when he's done, he'll discard you. The man needs an heir, a political marriage. You are 40 and—" He trailed off, unable to voice the word barren again. "I am unsuitable," Heaven finished for him, her voice quiet but firm. "I am well aware of my status, but I refuse to live my life hiding from shadows, Robert. Leonard saw me. That's a truth I can't ignore." The pressure culminated 2 nights later at the engagement party of Clarice Sterling, a mandatory social event for anyone connected, however tenuously, to the Scholar organization. Heaven attended in a shimmering bronze dress, knowing she was walking into a firing range. Clarice, already drunk on champagne and malicious victory, immediately sought her out. Flanked by her clique of giggling younger allies, Clarice struck while Heaven was alone near the bar. Heaven, darling, still showing your face? I admire the perseverance, Clarice drawled, her voice loud enough to carry. Though I suppose, if you can't manage a nursery, you must at least manage to look decorative. It's all a childless woman has left, isn't it? One of Clarice's friends chimed in, equally cruel. They say the ghost orchid is beautiful, but entirely sterile. Quite apt, really. Perhaps Leonard should have sent you a cradle instead, Clarice. The laughter was sharp and brutal. Heaven felt the familiar, burning prick of humiliation, the urge to retreat. She straightened her shoulders, prepared to deliver a biting retort about Clarice's questionable intellect, when the ballroom stilled. A hush fell, far more immediate and absolute than any planned announcement. Leonard Gold had arrived. Late, unexpected, and alone. He moved through the crowd with a terrifying combination of grace and danger, his eyes scanning the room, landing instantly on the knot of women around the bar. His expression was a thunderhead. Clarice, seeing him, beamed, expecting him to join her. Instead, Leonard walked past her and her terrified allies, stopping not beside Heaven, but directly between her and Clarice. His body was a wall, a shield of tailored black fabric and controlled fury. Clarice's smile dissolved. Leonard, darling, we were just commending Heaven on her resilience. Leonard didn't look at Clarice. His gaze was fixed on the space above Clarice's head, and the silence he commanded was chilling. The word is worth, Clarice, he said, his voice terrifyingly low. It wasn't a whisper, but a deep vibration that made the champagne glasses rattle. And you and your little court have committed an error of judgment that borders on treason. His gaze finally dropped to Clarice, and she visibly recoiled. I am not interested in women who are easily produced or who fulfill quaint, outdated expectations. I require a partner with intelligence and vision. He rested his hand briefly, heavily on Heaven's shoulder. Heaven George possesses more of both than every debutante in this city combined. She is the most valuable resource I have acquired in years. The declaration was terrifying, possessive, and absolute. It wasn't about love, but about value, and Leonard Gold had just declared Heaven priceless. The scorn in the room instantly evaporated, replaced by genuine fear. Without another word to the petrified Clarice, Leonard gripped Heaven's elbow and steered her through the stunned crowd, away from the ballroom and into a small, unused office. He didn't apologize for the scene. He slammed the door shut and paced, radiating frustrated energy. Why did you endure that? He demanded, turning on her. Why do you let their small words hold such power over you? You are brilliant, Heaven. You are stronger than all of them combined. Heaven leaned against a mahogany desk, suddenly exhausted. It's difficult to ignore the constant chorus, Leonard. When your worth is measured only by what you can produce and you produce nothing, the shame is profound. He stopped pacing, his eyes dark with empathy, yet tinged with a hard edge of resentment for the world they shared. I am measured only by the territory I take and the bodies I leave behind. I am the alpha, yet I am hated and hunted. You are the botanist, and you are pitied and mocked. We both wear a crown that isolates us. A difference of scale, perhaps, she conceded. No, a difference of vulnerability, he corrected. I am protected by fear. You are protected by your own quiet dignity, but it is not enough. The honesty was breathtaking. For the first time, she saw a chink in the Alpha King's armor. A man profoundly lonely in his power. I am terrified of your world, Leonard, Heaven confessed. But your focused attention? It is the first time in 20 years I've felt truly seen. He crossed the room in 2 strides. This was not a move to fight, but to claim. He reached out, not roughly, but with a profound care that belied his profession. He didn't kiss her, but rested his fingers gently on the side of her neck, then leaned down and pressed his lips to her temple, a gesture of ownership and reverence. Then understand this, Heaven, he murmured, his voice a low promise. I do not intend to look away. Minutes later, they were in his waiting armored car. Leonard bypassed his usual routes and drove her to the highest vantage point of the city, a dilapidated, hidden rooftop overlooking his sprawling, brutal territory. Look, he commanded, gesturing to the city below, alive with lights and shadows. That is my world. Ugly, dangerous, magnificent, and I need a perspective that is not stained by blood or ambition. He turned to her, the night wind catching his hair. I need the botanist who sees life thriving in impossible places. Stay with me, heaven. Be my vision. The air crackled between them. The choice laid bare. Safety, or a dangerous, all-consuming life with the only man who had ever truly seen her. The dangerous allure of Leonard Gold became heaven's daily reality. She had chosen the precipice, and now she lived with the constant, heavy weight of his world. Leonard was locked in a brutal territorial war with the rival Moretti Syndicate, a conflict that absorbed his time, focused his ruthless energy, and, critically, thinned the security that surrounded Heaven. Heaven tried to cling to the quiet dignity of her work. She spent hours in the conservatory, nurturing the ghost orchid and the rare Paphiopedilum, seeking solace in the predictable patterns of nature. Yet she felt the heavy weight of Leonard's world pressing in. The security details were stretched thin. The familiar, silent guards outside the conservatory entrance were often replaced by hurried, less disciplined faces. This temporary security leak was the window her tormentors needed. Clarice Sterling, driven by a toxic cocktail of entitlement and fury after Leonard's public humiliation of her, acted as the inevitable betrayal. She didn't have the courage to hire the thugs herself, but she leaked Heaven's routine and the compromised security details to a low-level Moretti operative, ensuring that the target would be the barren, useless woman Leonard Gold had elevated. The message was simple: attack Leonard where he was most exposed, his heart. It was late Friday night. Heaven was alone, meticulously charting the growth of a new tropical vine. The conservatory staff had long gone. The night silence was usually comforting, broken only by the hum of the dehumidifiers. Tonight, that silence was split by a sound that turned Heaven's blood to ice: the shatter of glass from the west wing of the conservatory. 3 shadows, large and crude, burst through the service door. They were not Leonard's disciplined men. They were thugs, smelling of stale smoke and cheap fear. "Leonard Gold's little trinket," the lead man snarled, his eyes sweeping the room, looking for valuable plants to smash. "The boss says we take you. We'll see how much the Alpha King values a 40-year-old dried-up asset." The taunt about her age and worth gave Heaven a sudden, cold surge of resilience. Though not a fighter, she was not defenseless. "Stay back," she commanded, her voice surprisingly steady. Even as she reached for the nearest defense, a heavy clay pot containing a sturdy succulent. The thugs laughed, delighted by her defiance. "She thinks she's a warrior. Maybe we can get a good price for the old mare." The struggle was desperate. Heaven flung the clay pot, striking the nearest man's shoulder. As the others rushed her, she dashed into the winding, densely planted aisles, using her knowledge of the conservatory as a weapon. She ripped open a steam vent, blinding one man with a hiss of hot, humid vapor. She used a heavy-duty gardening shear to slice a hanging net of vines across another's path, sending him sprawling. But she was 1 against 3. They cornered her near the main fountain. The leader backhanded her hard, sending her sprawling against the cool marble. "Enough games," he spat, grabbing her arm. "You're coming with us. Tell your Alpha King he should have picked a queen who could at least reproduce." As they dragged her toward the shattered window, a sound ripped through the night that was more terrifying than the breaking glass: the roaring engine of a high-powered armored vehicle screeching to a halt outside. Leonard Gold had arrived. He was alerted late. A new, experimental tracker he had insisted she wear moments before he left for his war conference had sent a distress signal. Leonard had not sent an army. He had come himself, leading a small, elite strike team. He burst through the conservatory entrance, a figure of pure, unrestrained rage. This was the action and protective climax. The casual ruthlessness he displayed in business was nothing compared to the primal fury of the Alpha King protecting his own. "Get your hands off her!" Leonard's voice was a low growl of thunder, promising absolute devastation. The Moretti thugs were fools, but they weren't blind. Seeing Leonard's face, a mask of cold-blooded killing intent, they pushed Heaven aside and raised their weapons. The next few seconds were a blur of violence. Leonard, a force of brutal, decisive nature, was a machine of focused aggression. He moved with impossible speed, his body a weapon, every blow calculated to break bone and end resistance. He didn't fire haphazardly. He eliminated the threat with terrifying precision. Heaven watched, trembling, as Leonard fought his way toward her, his immaculate suit becoming stained with sweat and the blood of his rivals. He was a terrifying, beautiful monster, and he was fighting only for her. He reached her, kicking the weapon out of the leader's grasp and driving him into a wall of stone with sickening force. Leonard pinned the man by the throat, his gray eyes blazing with cold fury. "You spoke of assets and value," Leonard ground out, his voice hoarse. "Know this. Every word spoken against her, every finger laid upon her, is a declaration against me." He didn't just win. He executed a visceral, defining act of protection, making sure the message was clear to the entire underworld. Leonard turned, dismissing his guards with a sharp command to clean the mess. He then faced Heaven, who was slumped against the cold stone, trembling. Leonard ignored the blood on his knuckles. He simply knelt, pulling the dazed Heaven into his arms, holding her fiercely. He pressed his face into her hair, and for a terrifying, raw moment, she felt him visibly shake. It wasn't the aftermath of the fight. It was the proximity of loss. "Heaven, God help me, Heaven," he murmured, his voice cracking. He pulled back, his eyes searching hers, no longer cold or calculated, but stripped bare. This was the profound confession. "Look at me," he commanded softly. "They mocked you for being barren. They sought to use your supposed weakness against me, but they don't understand. I am surrounded by women who can give me 1,000 heirs, and I don't care. I don't care about a mafia heir." He gripped her hands, his thumb tracing the faint scar on her knuckles. "I need a partner who challenges my mind and soul. I need the woman who sees the truth in the dark and can make something beautiful grow in the mud. I need the botanist who grounds me. I need you." His declaration was raw, honest, and terrifying in its finality. "I don't need a queen to breed, Heaven. I need a queen who grounds me. You are mine." Tears tracked paths through the grime on Heaven's cheeks. She looked past him to the ghost orchid, still pristine and pale in its controlled environment. It was a beautiful, unique specimen thriving in an impossible place. Leonard was impossible. Their connection was impossible. But it was real. Heaven's acceptance was not a soft nod, but a fierce grasp of his hand. She faced the true cost and reward of the Alpha King. "Then teach me to survive in the wilderness, Leonard. Teach me to be your queen." Leonard's eyes darkened with possessive triumph. He lifted her easily, carrying her out of the shattered conservatory. "You will never be alone again," he vowed, his tone absolute. He didn't take her home, see? He took her to his fortress, his most secure compound. The final vow tease was delivered in the sanctuary of his private chambers as he carefully cleaned the cut on her forehead. "You have seen the danger, Heaven. Now you will see the full extent of the protection I can offer," he said, his expression grim. "The world thinks I chose you out of caprice. They don't know that my choices are always calculated. By making you untouchable, I have secured my greatest weakness and gained my greatest strength." He paused, a predator planning his next move. "This attack was a mistake by my enemies, a costly mistake. But it's only the beginning. Now that they know how much I value my barren queen, the real war begins." He kissed her, a deep, possessive claim that sealed their fate, promising a future woven from danger, darkness, and an impossible, fierce love. Later, wrapped in a blanket on a leather sofa, watching the dawn break over Leonard's impenetrable compound, Heaven finally asked the question she hadn't dared to voice. "Clarice," she said simply. Why would she orchestrate such a thing? The public humiliation was enough. Leonard, who had been on a secure line for the last hour, leaned back, his expression turning cold and hard, the Alpha King returning in full force. "Clarice is a shallow weapon, easily directed," Leonard stated. She was motivated by jealousy and resentment, but she didn't have the reach to contact the Moretti faction directly. She merely passed the information to the man who does. He paused, letting the silence build, his eyes like ice. "The man who hates you for reasons that predate me, eh?" The man who couldn't stand being publicly outshone by my attention to his discarded property. Your ex-husband, Heaven. Heaven felt a dizzying shock, a cold wave washing over her. Fredrick Scholar. The name was a phantom limb, a source of old, deep-seated pain. Fredrick, she breathed. He was behind this? Leonard nodded, his jaw tight. I had the leader of those thugs singing before sunrise. Fredrick Scholar, seeing his younger, ambitious cousin Clarice fail to discredit you, offered her a solution. He provided the exact window of opportunity and the intelligence on your routines. He told them to use your barrenness as a personal taunt. It was his pathetic attempt at revenge. Heaven closed her eyes, recalling the final, crushing year of her marriage to Fredrick. He had initially tolerated her infertility, but eventually, his social standing, his family's demands for an heir, and his own fragile ego had shattered their union. He hadn't just divorced her. He had publicly blamed her, labeling her as damaged goods, ensuring her shame was absolute. He said I ruined his lineage, Heaven recalled, the memory tasting bitter. He told me I was a beautiful vase with no flowers. Leonard's hand shot out, cupping her face and forcing her to meet his gaze, which was now blazing with a protective fire. He is a fool, Leonard stated, his voice a low, gravelly promise of violence. He is a man concerned with trivial continuity. He cares about the shell. You are the fire, Heaven, the life. Fredrick Scholar's lineage is weak and easily broken. Mine is only sustained by strength, by vision, and by the only woman who can withstand my darkness and still bloom. Leonard had not just defended her from Clarice's taunts. He had now defended her from the ghosts of her past and the betrayal of the one man who should have protected her. The Mafia King's value system, though built on death and fear, was undeniably superior to the superficial cruelty of her former life. What will you do to him? Heaven asked, her voice barely a whisper, not out of mercy, but out of recognition of Leonard's law. Fredrick Scholar will cease to be a problem, Heaven, Leonard said, the finality in his tone chilling. I will not shed blood for his pathetic weakness. I will strip him of the illusion of power he cherishes. He will be economically devastated, socially ruined, and utterly neutralized. He will live with the knowledge that the woman he mocked became the untouchable queen of the world he fears most. Heaven looked at Leonard, at the duality of the man who could orchestrate ruin yet hold her with such care. She realized her acceptance was complete. She wasn't simply trading one cage for another. She was stepping onto a throne. I accept the danger, Heaven said, her spine straightening, the botanist's resilience hardening into a sovereign's resolve. I will not be the weakness. I will be the vision. Leonard gave her a slow, predatory smile. The true Alpha King. Good, because the war is not over, Mia Regina. He stood and walked to the high window, looking out over the city that was his domain. This attack proved one thing. I cannot keep you separate from my world. That is what they wanted. To use your civilian status as a breach. We will not give them that luxury. He turned back to her, and the final vow he delivered was a strategic plan. A promise of permanent integration and ultimate protection. From this moment forward, you are not merely my consort. You are the Alpha Queen, the most protected and privileged woman in my organization. You will attend every meeting. You will sit at my right hand. You will use that brilliant mind to manage the assets I trust least, the things that grow in the dark. Your expertise is invaluable, and your presence will be a constant declaration that your worth is not measured by fertility, but by my absolute, unwavering devotion. He strode toward her, pulling her up into his arms. I have already dispatched men to retrieve the ghost orchid and move the rest of your specimens here to a secure underground greenhouse I have waiting. Your sanctuary is now my fortress, and my fortress is now your home. He cupped her face again, his thumb brushing her cheekbone, the moment mirroring their intimate encounter in the conservatory. But now the stakes were eternal. This is your cost, Heaven. You face the abyss with me. But in return, I promise you this. The world that mocked you will kneel to you. They will fear the barren woman who became the most powerful force in the city, and no one, ever, will question your value again. He finally kissed her, and it was a promise, a claim of possession and a fierce oath of protection that erased the years of shame. The life she had known was over. She was no longer just Heaven George, the 40-year-old botanist who was publicly scorned. She was the consort of the most wanted man in the city, the Alpha Queen, and her reign had just begun. The whispers had stopped. Now, only the sound of her rising power remained. What would you do if the Mafia Alpha King chose you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to grab your bonus in the pinned comment.